Hey folks, we are live and welcome to Counter Clipping Show number 79. Next show will be 80, and I am not planning anything special because there's a lot going on right now, which we will surely talk about as we go here. So first of all, thanks everybody for coming. It is most appreciated. Today we are going to talk about game rooms and game tables. And no, before, because somebody's going to ask, if nobody's asked already, if I have house news, and I actually don't. But we do have, well, I haven't gotten bad news yet today. Let me put it that way. So we have high hopes for the current offer. But we'll talk a little bit about that. But in the context of that, it's like, you know, one of the qualifications of a house, and my wife is completely on board with this, is that there is gaming space, even though she is not into the wargaming thing at all. She is completely on board with wargaming space. So we're going to talk about that. And then somebody mentioned Stuka Joe's game setup, which of course is fabulous. And I'm probably not going to end up with that much space, but we'll see. And we will also talk about, you know, what to do about a war game table that requires games to be, you know, in a scenario that where you have to leave stuff set up if you don't really have a lot of space. So I'll take you through some of my current and past and hopefully future options, and maybe get some ideas from you fine folks about what I can do in the space. So we'll talk a little bit about the place that we have an offer out on, I suppose, which I don't know, haven't got any news yet. But if I have to suddenly bail again, I don't have Brant here to help me out and cover for me. But if I have to suddenly bail, that will be why, because I got an important phone call. So first of all, thanks so much, John Longshore. Much appreciated for the support. Of course, all the other support as well. So super chats are on. John, thank you. And if you want to highlight a question or comment or whatever that I can comment on, super chats are a good way to do that, because it is impossible for me to miss. And I do have some new technology here, which is not yet employed, but that I am warming up for, hopefully next week, which will be a Stream Deck, which was contributed through a very generous supporter. So thanks so much for that. You know who you are. We're working on it. We've been using StreamYard, which is, I think, working very well, but now I'm actually using OBS and StreamYard. And that has its own special capabilities and unique idiosyncrasies. So every time I'm on screen now, I'm reminded of how badly I need to go get a haircut. I just haven't had the time. So let's say hello to Ken X, or Ken 10, if you will, Mike Anthony Vincery, Iggy Crichtal, Joe Perez, Bill Thornton, Christopher Prest, Michael Potts, John Longshore, of course, Alan Salazar, Daniel Silverthorne, Daniel Barney, Andrew Franca, Vince C., Dale Brady, Vince Ree, Carl, Crater from the Wargame Bootcamp, Chris J., David Imperato, Rudy Armendariz, David Zell, Rick Cox, Marty Sample is in the house, Findle 70 also in the house, Stephen Roberts, Bill Simone. We're going to talk about IKEA, actually. Kyle Reese, David Imperato, we got you already. James Davis, Mark McNair, The Command Tent, Jeff Anderson, John Clark, if I didn't get you already, Charles Latora, Abraxas MF, Block Oddity, John C. from the sunny Philippines, Dave 1013, Michael Mellon, tell me if I'm doing it wrong, Tom Allman, Jacob Guernsey and Toil, Farshad Niazi, Just Guard is in the house. Awesome. And we Loquitur Gaming 6 Actual. We didn't get you folks yet, and Fucko is in the house. So what are we doing? I got because we're back in OBS with StreamYard. I now have the drinking and the clipping back up. We are finishing up Silver Bayonet, and we're going to have a surprise appearance by the next game in the queue, which will be a surprise. Let me put it that way. So as you probably, let's get the background out of the way. This is what's sparking this conversation. So as you probably are aware, if you've been tuning in for the last several weeks, we are looking for a new house. The current house is a tiny pestilential shithole. And one of the things, again, my wife is fully on board with this, is that there is some kind of space somewhere that I can turn into my personal game palace, which might not be quite so big as that might imply, but we're looking at places that have that, right? And that's usually a basement, but it isn't always. It could be a finished attic. It could be a space above a garage. It could be a palatial shed. Who knows? So we put in we saw about 7 different places this weekend, and we're not looking where we live. So we can't just like spin out to some place on a Thursday and take a look at it. It's got to be a planned trip because it's an hour and a half away. So we went up this weekend for nephew graduations. We did all that, and then we visited I think 6 or 7 different houses. We put a bid on one that we thought there was no chance we were going to get. And I don't have a confirmation that the offer is accepted yet, and I don't want to say and jinx it. But let's just say I am not I have not yet exited the stress pool about this particular issue. But Ron Nicholson from Newark, Ohio, thanks for stopping by, and Mo's Game Table. Thanks, Mo, for coming by. You know what? I saw Marco's video when he was in the basement, but apparently I have it in the shed. And that may be a good long-term goal, since the other idea is that this is the house that I'm going to exit feet first. So what, might be this house, it might be something else. We'll see. The basement, which would be the space in this particular place, has, it's kind of like a series of small rooms rather than one big room. And it's not clear to me how flexible that can be in terms of size. But it is clear that I can get a modestly sized game room in that. And it's been fairly stressful to touch on Bill Simone's comment. We've had 2 offers. One was just totally blown off the table. And the other one, I don't know what the thing went for, and I'm not going to go look, but we bid over asking, and we quite a bit over asking, and we didn't get it. So Vince C says, is it a good time to buy a house right now? Well, I mean, is there ever a good time, right? Unless you're an investor. We're not, viewing this as an investment. We're viewing this as the place we're going to live for the next 20 or 30 years. So, assuming we both remain above ground that long, which we hope so. We do think, and I think everybody agrees that there is going to be market flattening occurring in the future, but that's not really going to help anybody. And we might also have higher interest rates during that market flattening. So I'd like to get it done, but we're not in a desperation situation here after all. I mean, if we end up having to wait till next year, it's not the end of the world. And you can always fix higher interest rates by going and getting it refinanced when you can. So what are we playing? I actually missed the Pacific War game this week because it was just post Origins exhaustion. Not just Origins, but Origins and other shit going on exhaustion. Origins itself was fairly tiring, but we also had a very full day on Sunday when we went out and looked at houses and blah, 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 blah. So we didn't do that. Our guy whose house we play the third winter at, or in OCS normally, was out of town on Thursday. So I didn't do any gaming last week. Next week, and I thought this was this week, and I'm a bit glad to find out that it wasn't. Next week, Ron is closing on a new house in the next 2 days, so that's great. So let's make sure that Jesus Christ. I got him, John. Thank you. We got the Russian porn bots are out in force again today. So just checking on news. There is no news. So yeah, the new house is going to be quite a bit bigger than the old house. That seems clear, but that's not a big barrier. But we want that game room. Now I have done the calculations, and I'm this is a calculation based on a certain number of assumptions. I mean, you can use as much space as you want. Somebody, I think perhaps jokingly, said, "Oh, once you get in the new place, when can we expect Ardwulf Con?" And that's actually not a thing that is 100% off the table, but that certainly isn't happening soon. Let me put it that way. So we just blocked some other bozos. Thank you. Thank you, Bozo. Oh, more Bozos. Cool. You know you've hit it big time when you got Russian porn bots in your chat. So no, we're looking in the Northeast Ohio, actually. So Cleveland, Akron. Well, not Cleveland, but sort of in the Akron to Medina corridor. That's the idea. That gives good commute to Columbus for reasons that I'm not going to go into today, and it gives good commute to families which live in Akron and the west side of Cleveland. So based on the assumption that you are working with standard-sized folding tables. Standard-sized folding tables are either 2.5 by 6 or 2.5 by 8. And you could find other sizes, but if you go to Walmart or Costco or whatever and buy a folding table, it's going to be 2.5 by 6. And maybe Walmart has 2.5, or Sam's Club or something like that has 2.5 by 8 from time to time, but those aren't the ones I've seen. Yeah, must have internet. That's actually an open question where we're looking. So, if Mo mentions check out the Facebook Marketplace, that's true. Now we did look at, and I'll talk about this. We did look at game tables at Origins. I made it a point to slip my wife in there. This was, I mean, she had a badge. I didn't sneak her in, but we made a point to go visit the various places that were selling game tables at Origins, which was boardgametables.com, Carolina Game Tables, and Wormwood. Of those, Wormwood is, as you can imagine, the most expensive, but boy, they've got two different tables, one of which is quite a bit cheaper. But the high-end one is really nice. I mean, you got to admit. Yeah, so Mo, I'm actually, so that's a great idea. It's just buy somebody's old ass dining room table, and maybe refinish it if you want, and don't worry about it. That's totally an option. I can't actually plan this yet, based on I don't have an actual room to measure yet, right? So based on the assumption that if you had set up two folding tables in a 2x2 grid, there are very few games that you cannot fit on that configuration. There are some, and I have at least 3 of them, but there are very few games that you cannot fit on that configuration. And by my reckoning, that requires at least a 14 by 20 room. So, and that's a pretty big space. But of course you can, you could build something, and I'm not afraid to build something. I mean, it might not be pretty, but I don't particularly care. Mo mentions stability on folding tables, and that is true. The old wooden folding tables are much sturdier, and thinking about it, I've actually got 2 of them in this, and there's a third one. I've got at least 3 of those old wooden folding tables. They're much sturdier. I mean, that's just about weight. But yeah, it is easy to bump and jostle a folding table, and the lighter plastic ones, while they're easy to move around, are easy to jostle. And if you got a big stacks games, then you might have problems. Now, the advantage of the folding tables, of course, is modularity. You don't need 4 folding tables. You just need 2. You can just have 2, right? And that's no problem. You can move them around. However, you might have watched, I think it's Kyle Seeley's channel. He's got those small Linman tabletops that somebody just Findle 70, thanks so much. Furniture store that builds to spec in Peninsula. Well, that's not very far away. I will, Findle, let me know, because I would love, first of all, thanks for the support. And I'd love to know who that is. That would be a thing. What is going on here? Oh, I've got people sending me stuff here. Oh my goodness. There's stuff coming. I would, maybe I'll show you, but Mo has sent me his table, which looks like a former dining table. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? And there's videos on YouTube about how to make game tables as well. So, and you can use sawhorses, but again, stability is a concern there. And recognize, I haven't said this yet, but recognize that I'm working from the assumption of these tables holding something that I will need to leave set up for a good long time. Weeks or months or years in some cases. So stability is a concern, particularly if there's not enough room around the edges of the room to accommodate people walking around the table. That can be a problem. So the Linman tables are about 39.5 inches by 23.5 inches. And the individual table itself will almost perfectly fit, with a little bit of lip on every side, a standard sized wargame map. So if you have a 4-map game, you can literally get 4 of those tables, and they are inexpensive. The top, you buy the top and the legs separately. The top is about $20 right now, which I think is higher than it used to be. And I think the legs are about $4 or $5 a piece. And obviously you got to buy 4 legs, and you can buy adjustable ones that go up and down too. Linman is the name of the table at IKEA. Yes, it is a tabletop. They have them in various sizes, but specifically, and actually the longer size is my desktop here. But the smallest size is that 23 and change by 39 and change. And that is actually nearly optimal. So I may end up doing that. That actually saves a little bit of space if you think about it. Wormwood's lift table actually uses a giant brass or bronze or some shit wheel that you turn around, you crank it, and it goes up and down. It's pretty cool. I got, I can't say it's not cool stuff. Now, the game topper was something that we saw quite a bit of at Origins as well. But I'm not going to invest in a game topper. That is something you bust out and then put away when you're done with it. And this is not something I will need to put away. So that's the whole point. And of course, you got to figure out how to keep the cats out of it, blah, 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 that kind of thing. The long-term, solution might be a shed. I spent about $5,000 or $6,000 on a shed. You probably spend maybe 10 grand total to, get electrical out there, and maybe a toilet, and you would need some sort of wall or window heating and cooling unit. But you could turn that into a very nice gaming room. And I think you can get a 12 by 24 shed for something like $9 grand or something like that. But I don't know if that's, you can get this financed, of course, too. So game toppers have legs, so they are now just tables. So Simone Geertz built a table with a rolling surface that covers the space she builds puzzles in. Turns out that puzzles are about, yes, that's true. I actually enjoy doing puzzles, and I haven't done one in years because I don't have the room to do such a thing. So thanks, Doug. I will have to look up Simone Geertz. Now, like Carolina Game Tables can raise your table or lower your table, so your table height. So if you want a specific height on the table, and I know some people like them kind of high. I tend not to. I like to sit at the game table, but I also like to not reach, right? So in that sense, it's nicer to have the game kind of on top of you or underneath you, or you're kind of, you don't have to reach. It's all kind of right here in the same sort of keyboard type area. That's really nice. When we played Atlantic Wall, we had it set up in such a way as to facilitate that, and it worked really well. It was very comfortable. Everybody was close to the counters, so you didn't necessarily have to do a lot of squinting or trying to figure out what was what. Lighting is also a huge problem. There you go, Carl. That's a good idea. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. But you'd also I'd want a day one solution that I could instantly roll out or quickly roll out, so that I could get war games set up in that space fairly quickly. And you're about to see one of the war games that I'd like to get set up in that space. So Christopher also does jigsaw puzzles. I like I said, I like doing them. I haven't done any in years just because, again, of space, because there's just no room to do that here. Now, one thing that you can do, though, is create a cover. Now, if you buy a built to function gaming table from, say, Wormwood or Board Game Tables or whoever, it might be the kind with the sunken insides, and you have a cover that you could put on it to keep pets and guests and randos out of your war game, and that totally works. But if you don't have that, what you can do as a cheap substitute, assuming you have the extra plexiglass, is you can, hey, finish for the day. Don't want the cats getting in here. You can just scatter some D6s around the tabletop and lay your extra sheets of plexiglass or a piece of plywood or whatever over top of it, and it should keep unwanted pests out. So you have options that don't necessarily involve buying a built-to-spec gaming table. I actually have one of those Linman tables over here. That's actually the table that I do unboxings and stuff on. So it is a fairly functional table. It is not incredibly sturdy, I gotta tell you. So my preference, if I was going to use that kind of configuration, would be it would be in a room in which there's enough space where you could comfortably walk around the table without bumping it. Thanks, Findley, for the information. I appreciate that. Well, also, and protect. So that's another thing that a lot of those tops do, is even when they're in multi-parts, there's like a gasket inside that's like a tongue and groove joint between the sides. So if you spill something on it, it's not going to instantly leak down onto your game. So, all right, we have now finished Silver Bayonet. I thought I was going to have time to finish it last week, but that turned out not to be the case. Normally I would be ignoring this stuff, but there's a potentially important thing coming in, so I really can't. So my apologies for that. Ooh, very nice. Mike, thank you for that. 15 by 20 would be more than adequate. Like I said, almost any game can be made to fit into that room. That 14 by 20 footprint. There it is. I'm like, what did I do with the lid? And that does also account for bookshelves on each side. Now, it would 16 by 22 be better? Yes. But 14 by 20 is, I think, the size I'm kind of cruising for. Now, let me talk about stuff that showed up this week. One of which you've already seen. A Most Fearful Sacrifice. There's actually both pre-rounded and unrounded counters in here, and I almost set this up to clip last for this show, but there's really not very many counters that need to be clipped in there, so I certainly couldn't get a whole show out of it. I had mentioned for a while that I needed River of Death. This is the Great Battles Stigler, and Stigler is not here. So, unfortunately for Stigler, eventually they'll reprint this and I'll buy it. But, in the meantime, I have Chickamauga, which is a favorite battle. Very happy to have this. He gave me a very reasonable deal on this. So, thank you, Vince, for this. Much appreciated. Bought from randos on eBay for approximately 0.2 of the price of the one I'm about to show you. This is Skyrims of Darune's second edition from about 1985, I think. Yeah, 1985. I had this in the past, not when I was a kid, but I had this in the past, and it's a really beautiful set. Not convinced I'm ever going to run it, but I really wanted it. The price is certainly not going to go down. The price I paid was not terrible based on the prices I'm seeing. Not as cheap as I've seen, but not as expensive as I've seen. And Sword and Fire is 6 maps, and in a more or less square configuration, or rectangular configuration, as I recall. So it's pretty big. John is asking about the containers that I use for my Pacific War counters. I did a video about Pacific War storage solution, and there is a link in the video description of that video. I buy them at a place called the Container Store, but the trays are I'm not sure about that. They might be manufactured in Japan. So, well, finally, there's a new record in town that I stupidly exceeded for most expensive war game I've ever bought. Second Front. Yes, this is what we were playing at Origins. And, I've played, all or part of this twice now. I think there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to play it again. So I just said, screw it, and bought it. Obviously, I used the NEH show code because I bought it from Noble Knight. That saved me quite a lot of money. So it's a game on which I can talk for 2 hours complaining about Europa, but we have also left Europa with a positive experience most of the time. So Balkan Front, I enjoyed. War in the Desert, I enjoyed, even though it came down to it did suffer from the Africa Corps problem of coming down to the one die roll for something. In this case, it was Tunis. So some, maybe even all of those ASL historical maps are odd sizes and frequently in the larger than normal size, and I believe that's the case with Sword and Fire Manila as well. So the backup game that I'm going to start clipping, I didn't just get this, I've had this for a while, is Second World War Singapore. It is my avenue for exploring the Second World War system. I've got 2 games in that system. And I would actually like to try it at some point. Our group down here is not a fan of this particular thing. So probably not happening here. So that's probably going to be a solitaire experience, which again is, something you need a game space for. So we will see how that all works out. John, do me a favor and see if you can block these clowns, please. Thank you. You might not be able to, actually. Because I'm on 8 different platforms, and it's an error occurred. I can't even fuck. Seriously? All right, I think I got it. Andrew has a strong opinion on the Second World, and I have significant issues with what I've seen of this game system so far. I got to tell you, but between the 2 games I have, I do want to fire it up at least once and at least be able to criticize it with more of a foundation in the mechanics. So that is the goal, and I've already got it. So that's that's the one. So, like I said, I would like, I would totally consider doing. So you might be surprised. I might actually end up doing a show about this at some point. You might be surprised at how low the critical mass is to do a small gaming convention for war games. You really only need maybe 12 people, and you can run anywhere between 2 and 4 games with 12 people. So appreciate it, John. Christopher mentions think about a dedicated space is putting the Folio Games on the walls. I actually have plans for that. I've actually got some old pulp magazine posters that I want to hang that I just don't have anywhere to put right now for the spider and the shadow and stuff like that. So I would be well, we'll see, Andrew. Like I said, I am, my confidence is actually a little low on it, but I want to try it. I want to give it a shot. So how to organize this huge thing is another question entirely. So, but yeah, I mean, you can, Winterfest started like that. Started as this really small event where it was about 10 or 12 people to play Europa, no less. And, it's now, threatening to outgrow the space that we're in. And we had the super secret OCS Con here last fall too, and that went pretty well. And I think we had about maybe 14 people or something like that. It wasn't that many people, and we had four solid tables of gameplay happening. So some people like the standing tables. I prefer the sitting tables, particularly if the game is long, and I'm going to have to sit around for hours and hours and hours. So. If I stood that long, my back would be bad. I can tell you that. Marty's talking about a small invite-only event this past winter, 20 or so people, $40 for 3 days. Now, I'd be talking about a week-long event, right? I'd be talking about a weekend to weekend thing. So you could show up on Friday and play through the weekend, play through the week, and play. This is thinking way ahead here, okay? So, and I am not going to be able to house all these people. Even 12 people, unless they all want to bring sleeping bags and sleep on my living room floor, which I think I could talk my wife into, but maybe not. DCB had 25 guys show up to play miniatures games at last Saturday. Yeah, you could consider it that, I suppose. I mean, is it, if it's like a regular event, is it really a convention? I don't know. They used to have ClubCon, I think it was called, here in Ohio. That was like a quarterly event or something like that would draw like 100 people or something. I forget. I never went to it, and I'm reasonably sure it doesn't exist anymore. Carl mentions do a week-long event by getting an Airbnb house for a reasonable price. That's true too. And you double bunk people. You can most people are okay with that as long as it's not too crowded. You can get a place like one of those cabins at Silver Springs and fit 12 people and have yourself a fine war game event, right? So welcome back, Mo. Old man slumber party. That is completely an accurate description of what that would entail. Absolutely true. I am not particularly I do see all the chats, including the Twitch chat. Yes. The junk is coming from YouTube though. That's the advantage of one of the advantages of using StreamYard is I can see all the chats, and I am watching. So I have 102 on YouTube, 0 on Facebook, which is not weird, and 2 on Twitch, which is about average. So if I'm not careful, they might offer me a affiliate status on Twitch, which means I would not agree to that because I would not be able to stream on YouTube. Doug mentions rec centers that have party rooms that allow food. So a lot of like developments, condo developments, places like that might have a little rec center that you can rent. But usually not for a week. In my experience, which is not that broad, but it's not 0 either. And sometimes you'll have, usually food's fine. Sometimes booze will be a problem, but that's more local state regulations than anything else. And sometimes they want you to like be packed up and cleared out by midnight. So, and that's an issue. Alan asks, do folks feel that plexi is a must? For me, yes, it is. Unfortunately, often even with mounted maps, because they don't sit flat. GMT is particularly bad about this. Their maps tend not to sit flat. Eventually, if you play the game all the time, they will sit flat, but Also, to get them to lay flat, I've never managed to get them to lay flat just by like laying them out and stacking stuff on top of them. They'll pooch you. You fold it, put it back in the box, take it out, set it back up. It'll start pooching again. The only method I've found that actually prevents that is backbending the maps, and I've broken one doing that. So we could call it the counterclip or the counterculture con. That is not impossible. So many kinds of engineers in this thing. Holy cow. Christopher Prest mentions the retirement home for wargamers. I'm all for that, but I am not going to be able to finance that, unfortunately. So as somebody that does video and takes a lot of pictures, plexi is a pain in the ass because of the glare. I do have 2 sheets. I think it's 2. It might be more. Sheets. I think it's just 2 of the anti-glare plexi, the better anti-glare plexi. There's like anti-glare plexi that is made of bullshit. But I've got a couple sheets of the better stuff, which were given to me by somebody. So I can't, thanks Dave. Can't unfortunately tell you where to get them. But you can buy anti-glare plexi that doesn't eliminate glare, but it does help. You do get a little fogginess through that plexi, but since it's basically an etched surface. How much space does one need around the map? I tend to think 0, really. I mean, I like to have a little bit of extra space, and I always tape plexi down, by the way, just so it doesn't move and suddenly screw up everybody's table. And I have seen instances where big game under plexi, where the plexi shifts and the table underneath doesn't, and suddenly there's a big problem that everybody has to now figure out where all the stuff was. So that kind of sucks. That actually happened a couple of years ago at one of the huge OCS games at Winterfest. I do prefer a thinner plexi. So it's not too thick and you don't have that weird floating counters effect as bad. So that's good. Hissy Cat Studios, welcome back. Thanks for stopping by. Now, if Farshad, if you're talking about around the table, I think about 3 feet on each side, I think is the minimum. 2 feet is, only like that, right? And, my ass is fairly large. I would have trouble. Maneuvering around that. So 3 feet minimum, 3 to 4 feet minimum. 4 feet's better. So Doug mentions that there are anti-glare sprays, which is true, but you'll get the same sort of fogging effect as well. That it is just optics, so there's not much you can do about that. The stuff I have it works pretty well, and it doesn't like wreck the look of the maps, but it might. If I was doing photography with it, it could probably cause issues, and people might say, it looks a little weird, it looks a little washed out. The command tent asks, when leaving games set up for long time, dealing with the dust that inevitably collects on the maps. Do you cover? No, I just deal with it. And honestly, so the longest game I've played in recent memory, in terms of not in terms of hours, but in terms of how long it took us to play, was Second Front, actually, which was 1.5 years, or just close to it. And because we would come basically you missed it weeks occasionally. We would come basically every week and move counters around, and we did, as long as the game is getting played somewhat regularly, you're really probably not going to notice. However, on the other hand, at the OCR at the OCS house, sometimes we, for whatever reason, we couldn't play for 3 months, and we'd come back and things were noticeably dusty. I don't know that there's much you can do about that. You could do the thing that I described earlier, and if you know you're going to be away for a long period, throw some dice, throw some 6-siders down, put extra plexi on top of your map, and that should keep dust off. That is a thing that you could do. And frankly, most of us have plenty of plexi. I mean, I don't have that much. I have, I think, 7 sheets of plexi. So I don't imagine that I'm going to need new additional plexi at the new place. Let me put it that way. So I could be wrong, but I don't think I will. Now, if the counters are super thin, like these Second World War counters, then you might, if you tried what Christopher is describing and just blowing gently on them, you might find that you might find that some units are floating away. But if you've been doing this, you know that that's a risk. If you like sneeze on the map, and it might disperse some counters, and that's no good. Now, Abraxas, that is a thing that I also did, and it didn't work out quite as well as I wanted because the inside dimensions of the thing worked out fairly small. But I got like a large picture frame and just like tacked in a piece of MDF on whatever scrap shit that I had laying around on the back, and I can set that over a single map game as long as it's as long as there's nothing super close to the edge. I can set that over it, and I've actually. In some, I haven't done this lately, but in some cases, I've had a game set up and then put that down so that I could do a video on top of that surface rather than waiting to, rather than wiping the whole thing out. So many units. Oh my goodness. And there's also things that you can do with like, you could build trays, for example, of whatever arbitrary size you want, and create a rack for those. So you could have multiple games set up in those trays. I've seen people do that. Think of the like those racks you would see in a bakery that hold the sheet trays, that kind of thing. And then each sheet tray, which would be larger than like a sheet pan, but then you could have multiple large-ish games set up. I'm not particularly terrified of that, but because I feel like I'd rather have a couple of different tables, like 2 different tables that I could leave something set up on, where I could leave a big thing set up and then have a smaller table that I could also set something up on. And it is nice. One of our guys does have one of those map cabinets to store his maps in. That is, I think, actually a map. It's either for storing maps or art. I've also seen large artists' portfolios used for that. But I am not a huge fan of storing maps flat. However, thinking our way through that, it's probably one of the reasons I feel that way is probably because of space, right? I mean, the most efficient way to store this stuff is to keep each game and all of its stuff in this box that it came in. And if I had unlimited space, which I won't if something happens here in a couple of minutes, even if I had unlimited space, I mean, I'd need a lot of space to feel comfortable saying I'm going to remove this floor space or shelf space or whatever to put in this big map cabinet. I'd rather accommodate more games, to be truthful about it. So, but there are people, I know people who like to store their maps flat, and those I think are going to be people who have fewer games. That's not a bad thing. I've often said that. I sort of envy the people who are into fewer games so they can spend less money and get better at the games that they do have, right? And of course, Andrew is quite correct. Fewer folds and unfolds preserves the fold lines better, and storing them flat helps any fold lines or creases or whatever you have in the map disappear. That's true. There's people that like to laminate their maps too, and I'm like, no. But I put plexi over everything, so I actually found an industrial supplier of anti-glare plexi and ordered samples from them, and it was garbage. So I do, if you're into that and interested, I do suggest looking around. Mo says plexi lockdown tabs. So I've seen a couple of things used. One is those spring-loaded clamps that you find at a hardware store. You can do that, or I just use blue painter's tape. To be honest, I just tape the corners and sometimes the edges as well of the plexi down with blue painter's tape, and it works fine. But you do want to do that. Vince asks, "Are more games better than fewer games?" It's kind of hard to. I think that's a great topic, but it's kind of hard to package as a topic, right? Without like a paragraph. Or is it better to have more games or fewer games? So, it is a thing I have mentioned in the past. Oh shit! I did that upside down. It is a thing I have mentioned in the past. I am somewhat envious of low number of gamers. The apogee of which is the ASL people that don't play anything else. Lighting solution for dedicated gaming tables. In my opinion, and now you got to have, my basement with bare rafters will not. This won't work. But if you have a ceiling that's painted white, the best lighting is the kind of light that bounces off the ceiling. You get a couple of those floor-mounted lamps, or you can, just get spotlights and shine them off the ceiling if you want. That way you get sort of a room-wide illumination that illuminates the whole room kind of evenly. It minimizes glare spots. So that's my preference. But the lamps that do that tend to be floor lamps. So you got to have floor space for the lamps. You got to have a place to plug those lamps in. I've seen a lot of people use like those overhead swing lamps. I may end up with a solution like that. We'll see, depending on. Doug mentions the 500 watt torch-ear bulbs don't seem to be available anymore. That'd be unfortunate. Awesome, Jeff. Awesome, thanks. Very good. Wise Guy History's here too. Did I miss him? Did I miss Wise Guy History? Wise Guy History. Nate, thanks for stopping by. He is indeed doing Goss right now, so check that out. I am watching those with great interest as somebody who has played Goss in the past. I think I found, I should say, that it's not as intimidating a system as you think it's going to be when you start trying to read the rule book. So, yes, overhead light and plexi. Now, another thing that you can do, and I think I heard this from Stuka Joe, which is to have a metal surface. You have either mounted maps that you get to lay flat, and then you don't have to worry about plexi, or you get a steel or magnetic of some kind surface as your surface to play on. And there are magnetic whiteboards, for example, and then you use little neodymium magnets to keep the map flat. I believe that would be a workable solution. I don't know if I'd want to use it for a game that I have set up for months, but it does avoid the filming challenges endemic to using plexi. So, is this a Japanese parachute battalion? Interesting. Okay, good, Doug. That's good, because if that kind of lighting is what you want, then you do want the more powerful bulbs. I will agree with that. Matt Taylor will be playing Advanced Civilization. I like that game a lot. I would never play Civilization without Advanced Civilization. No, that's true. Half-Ass Gaming's talking about the magnetic counter holders, so you could play on the wall. And those are bigger than the hex. And in most cases, it's really awkward and confined. Also, if you have like professional photographer lights, like Vince appears to have, you'll find that that opens up other options to you that bozos like myself do not have. All right. So I think I have now clipped 2 counter sheets of this thing. And it really is a large game. we've got some additional Japanese over here. I'm just doing the Japanese for now. We've got what looks like a Malay, more Japanese. These are British in all colors. This stuff is British and Royal Navy. These are, I have no idea who these are. I think they're Americans. They might be, since the American Navy is probably in a different color than the U.S. Army. There's U.S. Army Air. Japanese Navy is red. I did an unboxing of this if you want to see the insides of this thing. So there's a lot going on here. I at first just started punching out the small scenarios, and then I decided I'm just going to clip the whole thing, which I have been doing intermittently for ages. I'll clip like half a sheet, and then I'll put it away for several months. Doug says he prefers LED panels to hot lights. I agree with that too, in general, not just for, God damn it, not just for photography, but because I don't want the heat. Carl says he got TSWW Hakapala. Was not brave enough to get the bigger games. I mean, the bigger games are big, right? So one of the goals of TSWW has been to computerize everything, all right, which is to create a digital version of TSWW, okay, and they have made some progress on that, I know. And I have to admit that kind of project is super appealing. It would kind of be the Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific Admirals edition of War Games, right? Because it'd be crazily detailed. Although they are 2-week turns. I think they're 2-week turns with an option for shorter turns, which is also the case with some Europa games. So at some point, we're going to need to address the complicated relationship between Europa and the Second World War series from Diffraction Entertainment, aka the Knowledge Company. I do have Balkan Fury as well. I believe there's a new version of Balkan Fury on the way. And if you are going to buy any of the games in this system to try, Balkan Fury is probably the best one. And there's a couple reasons I say that. One of which is not probably fair, but it's because the Europa's Balkan front. So a lot of the problems I have with Europa are problems of scale, right? And if you concede that is at the root of many of Europa's issues, then TSWW does not mitigate any of those issues because it is at pretty close to exactly the same scale. However, that's a bigger problem in some games than others. In Balkan Front, it's not too much of a problem. In First to Fight, it's not too much of a problem. In Narvik, it's not that too much of a problem. And Balkan Fury has basically the exact same footprint as, I'm not sure that's quite true, but it's the same scope as Balkan Front, aka Marina Mercur. So yeah, I don't know what that is. Units for everything. There will be a housewarming party. Whenever it happens, there'll be a housewarming party. I refuse to think about details because I don't want to jinx anything, but there will be a housewarming party, which, you know, I'd invite everybody to, but I don't think I can get my wife to get on board with that. So, and I mentioned that because there will need to be scotch purchased for the housewarming party. All right. Then we get these. So anyway, relationship between TSWW and Europa. Recognize that, first of all, Europa evolved a decent amount over the course of its long lifetime, right? Between 1973 or whatever it was, and say to Second Front, which was 1994. It wasn't the last thing that came out. I think the last thing that came out, with the possible exception of the magazine, was Wavel's War. And no, I'm not all that close to having a complete collection of Europa stuff. I am missing Scorched Earth, Storm over Scandinavia. I don't care about having Narvik if I've got Storm over Scandinavia. Fucko, if you're going to Chicago, let me know, because that's where I know I can get the stuff I'm looking for at the moment. But thank you for your scouting expedition to Kentucky, because now I know not to bother going down to the party source. I'll just go to whatever rando Ohio crap hole liquor store whatever I can get. So Europa's Norway does have multiple editions. So there's Narvik, and there's Storm over Scandinavia, and there's multiple editions of Narvik, actually. I would actually want Storm over Scandinavia because it's more complete. There's not really a reason to prefer it, to be honest, but I don't want to have to go back later and get Storm over Scandinavia. And frankly, the yes, my wife's package did not show up, but my stuff did. One of which was Jeroen, actually. So, but fortunately, Second Front had shown up before that. It's like there's they go into making these designing these counter sheets with a very clear idea in mind of how they're going to get laid out, and then they make OB corrections. So you then have random Japanese mountain brigades on somebody else's counter sheet. So I don't have Storm over Scandinavia and or the predecessor games, or Their Finest Hour, or Fall of France. I'm not particularly busted up about Their Finest Hour, which I would never play, or the Fall of France. I cannot do that without stopping. I can't fix that without stopping the stream. So, John, if you wouldn't mind putting your boot on their neck, thank you. That's always fun. I guess I could do it this way. Hold on a second. Let me try something. I forgot to put out all this social media stuff again. How about that? See if I can make this work. All right. Thank you, John. I see we have gotten that taken care of. So some of these social media posts are automated, so they just go out, but some of them aren't. There is I should have a queue set up in the I should have some kind of queue set up in the timer. Let's see. Try not to miss anything here. Wise Guy History says that Mont St. John was awesome, which is cool to hear. I do know that there's a new version of Mont St. John, new La Bataille de Mont St. John coming out from from Clash of Arms. That is. I'm not sure why I was struggling with that, but there you go. There we go. Those are bots. They're always bots, so it's it's not even that they're persistent. I mean, so the system was originally designed to accommodate the East Front, and I actually have never played it on the East Front. I suspect that it works there. Better than it does on the West Front, where a lot of extra stuff has to be bolted in to really make it work. It does, it works, but man, there's a lot of extra stuff bolted in. For that reason, I actually refuse to believe that we sometimes hear from people who don't play monster games that monster games never get play tested, and I don't believe that to have been the case with Second Front, because it all works at the end. It all does. Is it clumsy? Yeah, but at the end you get a result that makes sense. These are HQs. Confused. Charles Latora, welcome back to the stream. First of all, he says that with his 4'6" space, he can get 3 1-map games set up, or 1 3-map game, depending on the exact configuration there. So, and Doug says he'd use plywood rather than MDF. It's more rigid and lighter, I believe that's true. More rigid, yeah, I think so. But it depends, right? If it's it depends on exactly what you are trying to do. And in some ways, I think that MDF is a good solution. But it would depend on what I was trying to do. If I was trying to do that rack system, I would absolutely want to use plywood rather than MDF because of the rigidity problem. And as John mentions, in Europa, you really need the extra holding box sheets and table footprint for that. Carl says he recommends the new Hallenspiel game, Siege of Mantua, which I've actually glanced at. That actually does look pretty interesting. It's another one of those games where I tend not to want to mail order from them for no good reason, although I have done so in the past, and it's not been a problem of any kind. What I typically will do is just, they're coming to Origins. I'll just buy a bunch of their games at Origins. Ooh. Mike Anthony picked up 16 4 Against Darkness books. Then did you pick up Marco's book 4 Against Cthulhu or whatever it's called? Ping pong table is a good solution, actually. It is, well, for certain footprints. It is wider than you really want. It's so wide that it's going to be difficult to fit into the mid. It's going to be difficult to get into the middle of the table. But it is a big table, right? A full-size ping pong table is a large table. You can get a big game set up on it. You may even be able to get something like a War in the Pacific set up on it. And that's a big ask, right? War in the Pacific, I think, is 7 maps, as I recall. That sounds right. Either version of War in the Pacific. Well, not Pacific War, War in the Pacific. Pacific War takes up a decent amount of table space by itself, too, right? Because it's got a lot of off-map displays as well. Alone Against the Darkness. Okay. I knew that he had done one, which is cool. And I have 4 Against Dark. It's in the storage unit. Most of the RPG stuff is in the storage unit. The stuff that isn't is the stuff that I needed to not be in the storage unit, which is pretty much the Traveler, RuneQuest, and Call of Cthulhu stuff. Not because I've played any of those, but recently, but because, although I guess I played Traveler a couple weeks ago, I have wanted them available for research purposes, especially the Traveler stuff, for reasons that I shouldn't need to have to explain at this point. I didn't realize there were that many books for that at this point, but I can't say I'm surprised. That looks. I have the core book, and I might have one of the other books too, and it looks neat. And I just haven't had a chance to do anything with it. It is a thing that I hope to get a chance to do something with soon. So I guess I'll mention that I do expect schedule disruption to arise from moving and or settling in for some indeterminate period. But I don't expect that to disrupt this show. I won't make any claims for any other schedule thing. Balance of Powers does have a weird footprint, as does Storm of Steel. Decisions Storm of Steel. Both of those have weird footprints. I want to say Balance of Powers is 3 maps, but there's also the Africa map, which is you could fit wherever. It's only like 11 by 17. Storm of Steel does not have, which is still available, by the way. They had it with them at Origins, and I wasn't like really tempted, but I actually thought about, should I just get that again? I don't know. I got it inexpensively. But the copy I got didn't have the expansion update kit, and you really do want the expansion and update kit. John Longshore mentions that Noble Knight is good at verifying the contents, and they are. I had Second Frontier, which was the one I was worried about. So I had a choice between paying about $40, maybe $50 less and getting it on eBay. And which for, and I just wasn't seeing it for less than that. And having to deal with it potentially, the vicissitudes of eBay, or just saying, screw it. I'm going to spend a lot of money on it anyway. I might as well just pay an extra $50, get it from Noble Knight. And this is with the discount, right? And I just did it. I just got it from Noble Knight. And the box is not the box isn't winning any awards. There's tape on it. All the corners are intact, but there's a serious abrasion on one of the sides of the boxes. But the important thing is everything is there and it's unpunched. So I'm going to submit to you that there is no optimal wargame table shape or size, because wargames come in different footprints. There are 3 map games that stack the maps like this, this, and this. There are 3 map games that stack the maps like this, this, and this. How do you accommodate all of those things? So I really do like the idea of the modularity of using either folding tables or those IKEA Linman tabletops, the 23 and a change by 39 and change tabletops. I think you could get boned on those because they're very close to the size of a standard size wargame map. So if you end up with a game like Sword and Fire Manila, where the maps are not a standard size, you could end up getting some kind of configuration where you just can't accommodate that on the tables that you have. And like I said, I think you can get one whole rig for less than $40, and that's pretty good. I'm not going to have quite as easy access to IKEA after the move, but that's worth the road trip, frankly. Justagard mentions the Der Weltkrieg campaign game if you're doing the whole thing, and yeah, that's you've got to break that up over multiple tables, and that's an option, right? There are ways so a good example would be a D-Day game. I have shown, I'm not going to dig the pictures out right now, but I have shown pictures of the way we had the tables broken up for Atlantic Wall before, where we only had 3 maps. We had a standard size 8-foot folding table with like a side table to hold the Cotentin Peninsula. And so we only had 3 maps that were like right in front of us, and that entire southern area, which is I think like a 4 map section, it was on other tables behind us, and we would have to go during our turns, the Germans, you'd have to go and like move guys up. But most of the gameplay was not on those tables. It was on those tables near the beaches. So sometimes breaking it up over multiple tables really is the best solution. Sometimes, like in case of Case Blue, where there's like a foot of overlap between the Caucasus maps and the Enemy at the Gates maps, which creates oddities. I recommend drawing the border in, because you're going to put it under plexi, right? So what we did was we drew the border in dry erase or wet erase or whatever we had. And that way you weren't like confused where the units were after I yelled about it. Anyway. Closest to IKEA. IKEA is a destination store, so it's not like you're going to go there. Oh, I'd love some Swedish meatballs. Let's run down to IKEA. But for a weekend trip once or a Saturday trip once or 3 times a year or something like that, I'm willing to deal with that. And that's what we'd be talking about. The interesting thing about those is you can get different table legs too. If you want to get the extendable table legs or the longer table legs to make it higher or whatever, you can do that. 4 Against Mars. I might need to look into that. Yes, John mentions that we had Derville, and that so they didn't have because they didn't need it. They just had like the 1915 stuff. So they had it set up in different theaters on different tables. They didn't need the entire Eastern Front setup. And that probably saved them an entire table by itself. But yeah, they managed to play it. They actually made, I think, pretty good progress. They were a little short on players. So and John Loescher's right, of course. Some of those Der Weltkrieg games, there's no real need to have the Mediterranean stuff connected to the European stuff. That's not necessary. A series which is in a lot of ways the anti-Europa, in which there is a game engine that's pretty clean, pretty easy to play. It's not without Chrome, but it's certainly, it's no Second Front where there's exceptions and special rules and all kind of crazy shit. IKEA does do delivery too. I mean, you can order it off the website if you know exactly what you want. It's also nice to go in there and look around too. Christopher Press says he glues gunned empty peanut butter jars to his table legs to lift the whole table. I'm not sure what gunned means in this context. Patrick of Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials, welcome to the stream. Thanks for stopping by. I know it's not your first time here. Normally it's your first time thing. So it's like we're doing pretty good, for considering that I've consistently failed to send out all the social media posts in recent weeks. Like I said, there's a lot going on. So no news is bad. I mean, maybe it's good news. I don't know. We'll see. Kilroy was here. Thanks for coming. So we have, I think, said a lot of interesting things about game tables. Game tables more than game rooms. I'm the kind of person that really does want to have everything on shelves so I can behold the glory that is the game library. And also, unfortunately, I have close to, I don't know, hold on, I'll give you this number because I have looked at it lately. So this does not count expansions of any kind, even if they are standalone boxed expansions, sometimes which can be just combined into the main game, and sometimes you can't do that. I have 378 war games. That list does include a few marginal games, like random stuff from Avalon Hill that's not war games. But it doesn't include stuff like the Pathfinder game or something like that. The Pathfinder card game, like general purpose board games. Like my copy of Risk is not on that list. So there are a few odds and ends. I don't have a lot of games that aren't either war games or RPGs, but there are some. I probably could fill a 4x4 Calyx with RPG stuff that wasn't behind me, meaning it's not all the Travelers behind me. with Traveler and Chaosium. I think I could fill a 4x4 Calyx with non-Traveler, non-Chaosium RPG stuff, and I could fill a 3x3 Calyx with Traveler and Chaosium, and maybe a 4x4. So I have a lot of Traveler stuff. Just I mean, that's where that's coming from. So, all right, we're gonna be struggling to get all this stuff in this tray. I can tell you that. I guess the plus side is that the counters are so thin that they do store well. So, you know, kind of bonus, I guess. We are going to have to come up with an actual store. I just like slapping these in a GMT counter tray for now because the game is enormous. And I doubt that I'm going to end up with a... if I was to look on BGG, I don't know what the count would be, but it would be higher than 378. I can tell you that because I do put stuff like the Pathfinder Adventure card game on BGG. There's also stuff on here where I don't even know what the hell it is because it's weird, weird symbol stuff. So here's random cavalry, for example. Because why not? Why not have random cavalry units? I think I'm done clipping for the night here because I'm not going to start a new Second World War counter sheet. Yes. So the BGG number does not stack with the RPG Geek number. I find RPG Geek to be a much, much less useful site than Board Game Geek. And part of that is just that there's less people using it. So there's not quite as much community support and user contributions. Surely I have a spot for flak. Kyle Reese asks, which is easier to learn, OCS or GCACW? GCACW is easier to learn. It's not necessarily overall simpler, but it's much more modular in that you have basic and advanced scenarios and in GCACW. And this is true of, I mean, there's introductory and big full campaign scenarios in OCS too, but you got to know all the rules to play, say, Scorpions in a Bottle, which is one of the smaller scenarios in Third Winter, where that's much, much, much less necessary. You may never play the campaigns in Silver Bayonet is about Vietnam. That's the Ea Drang battle. So all right, so we're done with this. Where'd the lid go? There's the lid. So I have pretty close to all my war game stuff in BGG. I don't have close to all my RPG stuff in RPG Geek. It's a lot harder to find stuff in RPG Geek, in my experience. Much harder than it is in war games. There's a bunch of reasons for that. One of which is there may be more products. Because RPGs are generally game systems, and you might have, hey, the James Bond 007 RPG is the core book or box set or whatever, and then all these adventures and source books and blah 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 blah. That's a higher count of pieces that the database has to keep track of. Patrick says that GCACW shines best in the campaign games, and I agree with that. But they're also larger. They actually, once you have the hang of the system, they actually play really quickly. I mean, we played almost all of Long Roads to Antietam in a day at Winter Offensive. So Yeah, Silver Bayonet is Vietnam. So it's the same battle as you saw in We Were Soldiers, if you've seen that or read the book. So at some point, but I really can't like catalog all my RPG stuff until it's like on a shelf somewhere, right? What I don't want to forever do is have everything in boxes like they are right now. So I've started boxing up RPG stuff too, not because of the move, although that'll have to happen for the move, but because I'm like running out of space here. I, bought a big stack of games at Origins, and I couldn't fit them on here, and I didn't fix the shelf either. Oh well. So. Jeff Beeler asks about William Bird. I could tell you the Kaiser Krieg was getting quite a bit of attention at Origins from the wargaming folks. That was the Patrick. We actually did mention that. I don't know that we'll be having that at the house. Let me put it that way. But I'm not taking that off the table. I have considered that, or at least to the point of thinking what it would take to make something like that happen, and it's not that difficult. John Longshore says, if you want shelf space, don't do Traveler. A lot of my RPG shelf real estate is consumed with Traveler, which is probably why whatever ends up happening, I will end up building shelves so that I can have a digest-sized shelf to put all the Traveler, all the other digest-sized stuff that I have. And there's actually quite a bit of it. Not just Traveler. So, Brian Foley, thanks for stopping by. Abraxas asks, in my opinion, is EFS or OCS more complicated, or are they just equally but differently complex? It's kind of my opinion that I understand OCS a lot better than I understand EFS. I think that OCS is more elegant in a lot of ways. They are at almost exactly the same. In fact, it is exactly the same map scale. The unit scale is similar, but not quite. You have more units in an OCS, in a typical OCS game. In OCS, there's no like EFS for Normandy, right? For obvious reasons. So we're going to get that in OCS. There's Beyond the Rhine, which is West Front stuff. Yeah. Pardon me. Okay. I will save an announcement for social media, but it looks like there's good news. I don't have a contract in hand yet. The Hal Moore book, who just passed away not that long ago, is very good. So EFS versus OCS. So Nathan at Wise Guy History did a video on EFS versus OCS, and so I recommend looking at that. They are of a similar, without saying that one is definitely more complicated than the other, or that they are of the same complexity level. They are in the same complexity band. They are of similar complexity levels. I feel like OCS has a more clearly written rule book, which certainly helps learning it. However, I do think there is a system mastery question that is that is more of a question with OCS than it is with EFS. That might just be that there's a lot of people floating around that are very proficient OCS players. And I think that's less true of EFS, particularly since until Army Group Center just came back out, no EFS game had come out in like 15 years. That's not going to help. I think both systems are worthwhile. I think EFS is actually a really good solitaire experience, in part because you do kind of, you are the classic problem of the Russians getting kicked in the face for roughly 6 months, not quite 6 months, but a decent amount of that time, right? That's taken up by that campaign. So Kaiserkrieg is a States of Siege game by Ben Madison. Okay, and Ben has really embraced that system. Let's put it that way. And I have a pretty high opinion of his work with the States of Siege system. So I a bit regret not picking that up at Origins, but at the same time, I bought plenty of stuff. I don't want to spend any more money. We actually used the under the table space at Origins extensively to store all the the extra ding dongs. So Brian Foley says, any games coming out in the next month that I'm looking forward to? So I expect that I'm trying to remember what I have from GMT that's in the pipeline, because they did have a charging update last week. We covered this last week, and I don't remember what it was. I've been busy, man. So June 11th, charging and shipping update. Fall Saigon, Fire in the Lake expansion, Empire of the Sun, 4th printing, Flashpoint South China Sea. I didn't order Flashpoint South China Sea, a decision I will probably regret. And I, of course, already have Empire of the Sun, so I didn't need that. And the Fall of Saigon expansion for Fire in the Lake I'm looking forward to, but that's frankly going in the box. And it's probably in its own box, actually. So I probably am not going to play that anytime soon. Hissy Cat Studios, what other sci-fi RPGs have I played other than Traveler? So that's an interesting question. I have not played Star Frontiers, for example. And a lot of people did like Star Frontiers. I think it is a far less powerful game than Traveler is. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it is tailored to a particular experience to a much greater degree than Traveler was or is. Yes, actually, Test of Faith, which is OSS from Compass, is coming pretty soon. And I have been off the radar with Compass for the last several weeks, just because I haven't made the shows or anything. There's too much stuff going on. Yeah, Kaiserkrieg is White Dog Games. It's pretty cool. I have played a decent amount of Space Master. Now, Space Master was the sci-fi version of Rollmaster. And like Rollmaster, it eventually was revised and updated into a standard system type level of complexity, and that was Space Master Privateers, which kind of dicked over the universe if you liked the universe. And I liked what we saw of it, but we never really had like a comprehensive product that said, hey, this is what the Space Master universe is like. And what we did see was somewhat Traveler-esque, let's say. Mike Anthony's asking me about Our Share of War, which that's not ringing a bell for me at this exact moment. I have Universe, SPI's Universe. I had it back in the day and I got it again. Somebody was kind enough to sell or give me a copy of the Merchant thing that was its own game, Star Trader. There is SFRPG, Those Dark Places. That sounds very interesting, Jeff, because there is another thing called Hostile, which is a Cepheus engine thing that is also inspired by Alien and Outland. So that actually is where I would look. I haven't heard of the product that you're talking about. Hissy Cat Studios asked about Iron Sword Starforged. I have heard of it. I have not at all looked at it. So I am unable to comment on that. I gotta tell you, if I wanted I might at some point run a Classic Traveler one shot just for fun. That is a thing that could happen. No, it was Our Share of Glory. So no, I never got any feedback on it. Nobody ever gave me feedback. People looked at it. I know people looked at it, but nobody. No, because I saw that it got downloaded a couple of times, but I never got any feedback on it. At some point, we'll revisit that, but at some point, it just might turn into a Cepheus engine thing too. We'll see. It was very Traveler-esque anyway, so I would be comfortable with just saying, "Fuck it, we're rebuilding it on the Cepheus engine chassis." So, and I say Cepheus engine because that's kind of where the open source is right now on that. 5 parsecs from home looks interesting. Jeff Beeler says he has a digest-sized RPG from Games Workshop that looks like the prototype for Warhammer 40,000. What is that called? That'd be very interesting. Universe was, I believe, an Eric Goldberg design. I might have been John Butterfield. And it's got some really interesting, it's clumsy, right? The whole thing's clumsy, but it's got some very interesting ideas in it. And I wanted it basically to say, hey, maybe we can turn this into something for Traveler, right? To extract these interesting ideas, like the little matrix you get that tells you what your strength is on high gravity worlds and stuff like that. That's actually really quite neat. So. Christopher Press, thanks again for Star Trader. I got to get it into the universe box so it doesn't get lost. It's sitting in a bag on top of the boxes right now. The universe box is in the Wargaming boxes because it's in a box and it's from SPI. I am not particularly looking for an RPG engine. Iron Sworn is another one of those things that I have heard of, but not looked at all. Just for Press says Universe is Butterfield. Yeah. Eric Goldberg did Dragon Quest, which is, I think a game that holds up a lot better. Ooh, I need to check something. That holds up a lot better than Universe does. I mean, of the 3 RPGs that SPI did, obviously the dog of the bunch is the Dallas RPG, which is, maybe not an RPG, and the best of the 3 is Dragon Quest, and it's not particularly close. Luke Couture Gaming has just received his Pacific War, which is awesome. So Delta V was released separately as well, and depending on which version of Universe you got, if you got the paperback version, you didn't get it, but if you got the boxed version, it was in the boxed version. I would like to look at the Alien RPG from Free League, but I do not wish to buy the Alien RPG from Free League. Obviously, one of the classic Traveler, at least scenario ideas, is basically running Alien in Traveler, right? That is a thing that has been done many, many, many times. And there's scenario support for that too. The Death Stations, I mean, although there's no aliens in it as such, the Death Station scenario feels a lot like an Alien scenario. And if I were running that, you can't do this at a convention, obviously, but if I were running that, I would totally put the aliens, I'd have all the Alien soundtracks lined up to play in the background for that. Because it's very, it's a I don't want to spoil it. It's a space station adventure where bad shit has gone down. So those dark places. I'm not familiar with that either. Jeff, you're killing me here. I'm getting all kinds of more RPG names coming than I can keep track of. One of the great things about Classic Traveler is the character creation takes 5 minutes, right? It's really, really, really fast. I mean, if you've never done it before, you might take 15 minutes to do it, but if it's still really fast. The entire character creation process is basically on 2 pages. So full-size pages. So it is Mark Hodgkinson, first of all, welcome back. Says Pacific War only fits on his 8x4 table, only just fits on his 8-foot by 4-foot table. If you put all the displays, all the task force displays and all that stuff down, yeah, it's going to be really tight. You can do it. We are playing on with the full size map. I think we put all the displays down. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. And we're on a 5x8 table, which is 2.5 by 8 foot folding tables, and it's big. So it takes up a lot of that table. The C3I games of of the current magazines that contain war games, probably have the highest consistent quality. But part of that's that they only come out. Part of that is that they only come out like once a year, and part of that is because they're like Mark Herman games, right? Like half the time. So that's the case. Also boosts their quality considerably. Local tour gaming. So we ended up not playing all of the engagement scenarios. We moved on to the battle, and we're still on the battle scenarios. I think we're going to do at least one more battle scenario, and then move to a campaign scenario. I think that's the current plan. None of the battle scenarios are really going to take you more than a session or a sitting or two to finish. So we have consistently played them in one sitting for the battle scenarios. So yes, Legacy War of Ages was essentially Highlander with the serial numbers filed off. Oh, that's nice. The Alien RPG from Free League is $16.74 for just the PDF on drive-through. That might be worthwhile. I'd kind of like to see the book. I am more amenable to. So I mean, we're entering a new era of. We're not even entering. We're in a new era of RPG publishing, where the standard way to publish an RPG product now is really in PDF. There is an enormous quantity of product that is available in PDF and or print on demand. I picked up these 3 Johnstown Compendium hardcovers for the new RuneQuest. This is a campaign called Sandheart, and it starts with Tales of the Sun County Militia. I've heard it described as a police procedural, but set in Glorantha. These are like 100-page, 90 or 100-page books. They're gorgeous. These are print on demand books. You'd never know that. They're not crappy at all. They're really, really nice. They weren't hideously expensive, and I got the Brant. Thanks for stopping by. Ooh, furniture rearrangement. That sounds very exciting. And Toil. So the Dumarest saga was a huge inspiration for Traveller in the first place. The problem with that is finding the fucking things. They're very difficult to run down. I was at one point for years, and I still have a lot of them somewhere in a box. I was for many years trying to track down the Alan Burt Akers Dre Prescott series, which I think ran to 35 or 36 volumes here in the US. And then there were several additional volumes that were printed in Germany. And even at the end, I just don't see them anymore. And they're very hard to track down. And the Dumarest books are harder than that to find. So awesome. Mike Anthony is wearing his fine and stylish Ardwulf's Lair t-shirt. I also mentioned, speaking of fine and stylish, I finished watching The Offer, which is the Paramount Plus series about the making of The Godfather. And where's the scotch? Oh, it's on the other table. It's okay. It was pretty good. I mean, it has issues, but the casting's all really good. Guy that plays Francis Ford Coppola is really good as Francis Ford Coppola. The guy who plays Mario Puzo is pretty good as Mario Puzo. Without necessarily saying that they're apishly following the historical, actual people. And almost everybody in the movie is an actual person, except for Colin Hanks's character, Barry, who is like the head of Gulf and Western. So Paramount at the time is owned by Gulf and Western. And Charlie Bluehorn is played by Bern Gorman, who's great. Although his accent kind of disappears from time to time, as he's supposed to have this Austrian accent, and sometimes it just kind of vanishes. But that's fine. You cannot buy the t-shirts currently. That is correct. We'll be fixing that. I just haven't had time to fix it yet. But the real joy in the whole thing is Matthew Good as Bob Evans. He's just amazing whenever he's on screen. It's just absolutely fucking magical. I have to check that Traveler scenario out. I did buy back in the day the Dragon Magazine archive, so I legit have all of the Dragon back issues. There's also, yes, so some of the Paul Anderson like Polytechnic League and Policotechnic League or whatever the fuck the thing was called, a lot of those are very Traveler-esque as well. There's some Asimov inspiration there, I think, that's fairly clear with the giant empire. But the clear inspiration, which is clear from like page 1 of the Doomerest books, is a lot of it comes from Doomerest. It is the number one piece of inspiration. What was the number one? I mean, people have done a lot of analysis on what the number one piece of inspiration from literature was for D&D, and I'm not sure there was one. People, sometimes say Jack Vance because of the magic system, and okay, that's important. But I think tonally, I think that comes more from Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser than anything else. I think early D&D. I think that was the intention, and then it was evolved away from that by the consciousness of the community rather than by what Gary was saying towards a more Lord of the Rings model. So that is worth its own show. Yes, Frederick Paul did the Gateway stuff, which those are pretty good books, actually. I don't know if I read them all, but I read the first couple. Yeah, I've got an enormous mine of Traveler material. I've got I don't have all of the Little Black books. Okay, I'm missing some of the scenarios and some of the supplements. I have all of the double adventures. I have all of the books except for book 8 Robots. But I'm missing some of the original adventures and some of the original supplements. But I have the reprints, the landscape reprints that Far Future Enterprises did, and somewhere one of them is even signed by Mark Miller. So between those, and I've got the PDFs of, and I've got the physical copies of a lot of the Game Lords and FASA stuff, and some of those Game Lords. And so I think of the old third-party companies that were doing material for Traveler, I think that Game Lords did the best supplements, but FASA did the best adventures. And that may have just been where the Keith brothers went for that product. There's some really good Traveler adventures that came out from FASA. Really good. H.B. Piper was another one, Space Vikings specifically, but there's a couple other books kind of in that same setting as well. Andrew, I don't know yet. I don't know yet. It will happen. I promise it will happen. I don't want to. I haven't heard from Amazon on that. I heard that it took a long time to get approved for Amazon merch. So it might be Amazon merch when it does come back. Let me put it that way. The shirts do not make me look slim, I can tell you that. So I am the only one with this shirt, though. This was actually a prototype that did not work out. So the only time I wear this one is at conventions. So to say nothing of like travelermap.com is an enormous resource for Traveler stuff, right? Mongoose is doing just an enormous quantity of material, which I'm all very happy with. The 2300 AD box set just shipped or started shipping. I think Stainless Steel Rat does have a little influence as well. Yes. That's a Harry Harrison thing. I only read the first book. Keith Laumer, I don't have any information about Keith Laumer. He was an influence too. Keith Laumer's Retief, or however you pronounce that. That was an influence. Marion Zimmer Bradley's not so much on Traveler, and yeah, she had issues. I'm not talking about that. You can go Google that if you want. But that is not a thing we're talking about here. We have not even brought up food yet. So Carl, thanks for stopping by. We did get there was only one green, so And actually, yeah, Andre Norton was a very influential author back in the day too. Actually, wrote the first. I don't know if you want to say official first D&D novel. Quag Keep was set in the world of Greyhawk. I never read any of the Retiff stuff. I read a few of the Stainless Steel Rat books, and I was very happy with them in general. Food in science fiction. There's a running joke about food in the Game of Thrones books about George's lavish detail on food. So, and actually, some of that spilled over into the show. Weird throat tickle. Now, I did read the first Hammer Slammers book, and I didn't think much of it. It had a great cover, but I didn't think much of it. But it is an important traveler influence, no doubt about that. Honestly, I think the only reason it was as well regarded as it was because it had a great cover. But so we'll see. We'll see what happens. I may have a more solid information next week. I don't know how to take this text that I just got. That's the thing. Okay. So I guess we're waiting for a contract. We have just received word from the Operational Studies Group. News you can use. The Roads to Hell, Napoleon's Last Gamble Expansion Kit number 2, is back in print. The Highway to Brussels, Napoleon's Last Gamble Expansion Kit number 1, is available again as well. And that is I think I have that, but it wasn't called The Highway to Brussels. So one of the reasons why, if people ask me about which of those OSG games which of those OSG games I recommend people start with, it is Napoleon's Last Gamble, in part because you can expand it with these expansions, and they're not terribly expensive. So definitely want to bust some of that out as well. That's one of my favorite series that I would really like to play more of. So that's nice. Make Room, which was the book that formed the basis of Soylent Green. I have heard good things about the A. Bertram Chandler stuff, and I have not read a word that guy has ever written, and it sure seems like I was like late to the party on that because I swear I never heard of that guy. Maybe it's a name similarity thing. I have no idea. So just make sure that this worked, because we've got bozos here again putting whatever dickery in the chat. Abraxas, this is how we found the channel. Awesome. I'm probably the only. Somebody else did. I forget who it was. Might have been Nick White, or might be getting the last name Matt White in the UK that has recently. I might be thinking of somebody else. Somebody else has done some content on that relatively recently. Yeah, Matt White. Very good. Six Actual used the Traveler universe as a model for his sci-fi novels, his or her sci-fi novels. I don't know genders. I don't want to make anybody upset. So I'll have to look at that. My preferred way to read fiction nowadays is actually as ebooks. It's just easier. I don't have to worry about shelving them. Jezza One, yeah, has also done some Library of Napoleonic Battle stuff recently as well. So it's all good. So we might have, I don't know if we're going to be there for the inspection or not. I don't know if that's an expectation. There's going to be an inspection. Now, I don't read ebooks on the computer. That sucks. I read them on a tablet. That's much, much easier to deal with. There's definitely going to be a significant IKEA run. Let me put it that way. Doug says he really likes the Leary series from David Drake, which is currently running. I think the only David Drake I have read was Hammer Slammers and Ranks of Bronze, neither of which I really liked. Ranks of Bronze is fun. It's a fun idea. It's aliens kidnap a Roman legion and have them fight for them. And that's pretty cool. I'll tell you what, I sometime last year, what the hell? At some point, might have been the year before, I placed a huge order of White Dog games and got like 8 of them. So I use a tablet because I can also watch YouTube videos on the tablet, and I watch a shit ton of YouTube videos. Charles Sheffield's Proteus books, those were good. I have read those. I could swear we weren't here for the inspection of this place, which I'm glad we weren't, because I have found that dude and murdered him probably, because, man, there's a lot of shit wrong here that didn't come up in the inspection. So that's the reason why I use a regular tablet rather than one of the fancy Paperwhites. The Paperwhites are nice. I think they give you a better reading experience if you're just reading. But I don't want to have a separate device just for that. I do somewhere have a Kindle. I have a Kindle Fire too, but that's just a tablet. That's just a smaller, heavier tablet, really. Cheaper, smaller, and heavier. So, but Kyle, I agree that the like the Paperwhite offers a superior reading experience. But another thing I don't have room to do this sounds weird. I don't have the space here to read. There is nowhere for me to sit and read except in this uncomfortable fucking office chair. And I don't do that. Or I could read on the computer, but that's a shitty experience. So I look forward to having an easy chair of some kind where I can read. Ooh, Fierce Valor, the true story of Ronald Spears and the Band of Brothers. That sounds neat. I could see that. Oh, they're back. Oh dear, they're back. They are back. So thank you, John, for taking care of that. John is so fast that when John boots them, I still see them here in the StreamYard chat. So I can't, then if I go and do it, I can't boot them again because they're already booted. So I get an error message. I'm like, well, crap. Yeah, so the Commodore Grimes thing, that's my understanding, is it's basically Hornblower in space. Honor Harrington is basically Hornblower in space as well. Christopher Press, if you're just going to read ebooks on it, the Kindle Paperwhite is the best one. I don't think there's competition there. If you're going to do other stuff, I bought a Samsung something tablet from Costco. It's like a 10-inch tablet. And it's very good. I wanted it for ebooks and rule books, and reading PDFs is a different experience than reading. You can actually load PDFs in the Kindle reader, but I don't know how that would work on a Kindle. The actual Kindles are very lightweight too. It could be Bob the Brave, but that would probably be too brave for Bob the Brave, if you know what I'm saying. So you could use an iPad. Like, same deal with my Samsung tablet. I would just for PDFs, you really want color capabilities, in which case I would buy a tablet with the largest screen. You don't need it to be particularly powerful, but you want a big screen with good resolution. I would say the 10-inch screen would be the minimum screen size I would go for something like that. That's why I bought the size tablet that I did. Now, ebooks again, is a bit different. I do all three things, right? I read ebooks, I read PDFs, and I watch videos. I usually don't watch streaming content on the tablet. I usually do that at the computer, but I almost always watch YouTube videos on the. Well, sometimes I do that at the computer too, but I watch YouTube videos on the tablet. So it's to just buy a tablet is more versatile, right? You can do all this on your phone if you want, but man, the screen is really tiny. But I was reading ebooks. I mean, you could change the print size on the Kindle app. So I was like reading books. I read most of Chandler's Campaigns of Napoleon on the ride in the bus, for example. I'm gonna have to look into Nathan Lowell. Ebooks, so you can, if you could just go find an ebook, your Kindle app will read it, but you might have to go through some malarkey to get the Kindle app to recognize it. But you can just like open with, find the file and open, keep them in a folder and find the file and open with the Kindle app and it'll work fine. And again, a lot of it's just about, I don't want to necessarily store all these friggin' books. I'm gonna end up having probably, I'm gonna guess, somewhere between 1 and 2 boxes of war games after everything is up and organized and all that jazz that must go. So we will probably be figuring out how to deal with that again in the immediate future. So, well, maybe not immediate future. This could be months down the line, but. So we are about wrapped up. So I forgot to put up I forgot to put the ticker up again. So here's the ticker. There's not a lot here this time because I don't have anything prepped for the week yet. There's not going to be a Traveler Tuesday video tomorrow. There should be an RPG video on Wednesday if I get it edited. There should be an unboxing video on Thursday if I get that edited. So you can see there's old news here. So I thought I cleaned that up, but apparently not. So we do have an RPG stream scheduled for Sunday at 3 p.m. And I believe we will be making that time. So because I think all of our stuff will be happening on Saturday. I hope so. So let me just put that away since there's a bunch of old trash in it. But let me give a shout out to new patrons, Tom Blessing and Michael Simon. So thanks very much for helping to support the channel. It is much appreciated. It really does help. And I want to, that's going to be a thing. So hopefully I'll remember all this stuff. I have spent no preparation time last week on channel stuff other than just the videos that I did get edited for last week. So we'll have some stuff out. And of course we'll be back next week with more counter clipping, and we might be revisiting the game table planning topic too. So I'm gonna kill it now. So Mark, I'm not sure what video you're talking about. However, our good friend Kyle has sent me these new counter sleds, and they look really nice. I haven't tested them yet, however, so we will see. I will have an opinion on these. I will do a video on the Aries counter clipper or counter clipping tool. These I'm not sure I'm going to get a video out of, but they're very promising looking, and they're definitely, they hold a lot more counters than say the OSG ones, which OSG doesn't make. Somebody else makes them. So. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. I hope to have good news for you next week. And yes, we will be on this channel tomorrow with Dan at 7:30 Eastern. So everybody tune in for that. In addition, I've got 2 interviews lined up for next week, which won't be live. I'll record them and broadcast them, but they may start to hit next week. So there's a lot of content in the pipeline. So once again, thanks everybody. Please do give the video a thumbs up. Please do support the channel and all that jazz. And I will see you all next time.